Hi, this is Mark from LongIslandWatch.com. I'm not in my usual setup. I'm out here in sunny Fountain Hills, Arizona. I'm visiting Fine Timepiece Solutions. I've talked about Fine Timepiece Solutions in the past. They assembled in the USA Islander field watch that I released back in 2021. And as I've been hinting at for a while, they're producing my quartz diver. So this project's been going on for about a year. I figured why not come out here, get some good footage for you guys to see how watches really are being assembled in the USA. Not only are they making watches, they're also actually making their own quartz-based movements, the Ameriquartz, in the future, an American automatic movement called the Ameriquartz. This is really bringing watchmaking back to the USA. Today, going to be going inside the facility, getting a little more deep dive into what goes into assembling a watch. It's not just as simple as it sounds, just putting parts together. There's a lot that goes into it. So this is really part one of a video. Today's video is going to be mostly about Islander and assembly of watches, and then we'll follow on with another video and we'll really get into the assembling of movements in a little finer detail and talking about what the goal of this facility really is. So come on in, let's check it out. Okay, so we're inside FTS right now. I am sitting here with Kunal. Nice to see you.
Good to see you, Mark.
Again.
Yeah.
I've known Kunal for, it's probably about a decade or so, a number of years. And Kunal is the president, CEO of FTS USA, Fine Timepiece Solutions USA. Kunal, what are you guys doing in this facility and where are we going?
So we really built FTS to be able to empower other American watch brands to be able to take more control over their production, their design, the overall process of building their watches. Okay. We work with clients that are well-established watch brands, people like you, and we also work with clients who just have a dream and a vision to build a watch, based on what they've envisioned.
Okay.
And so we can literally take anything from a paper napkin drawing and build it out to renderings, engineering drawings, create pre-production samples, and at the end of the day have a product that you envisioned and you really wanted in your hands to sell.
Okay, and you're doing this all right now in Fountain Hills, Arizona.
Yeah, so the big thing is we are employing American people, training them, teaching them these valuable skills of being watch technicians and eventually watchmakers.
Okay.
And so that's what we're doing. We're building the skill set back in the country where we feel like it belongs.
I think we'll take off now and we'll start going through.
Yeah, I can't wait for you to see it.
I'm actually wearing the watch today, and I mean, as Kunal said in the beginning, this is not the beginning of our journey. This is almost the end of our journey with this. This is just assembly. We've been through all the design, all the fact checking, all the design for manufacturability, sampling. I proof samples. We work things out. I don't like this. I like this. Even Kunal got a sample and he said, Mark, we didn't like this part about it. We're going to improve on that because I don't think it's good. Yeah. So I think it's all really good. I'm excited. So it's too loose on me. Right. I got to
It looks good though.
Thanks.
It looks good.
Let's check it out.
Yeah, let's do it.
Thanks. All the parts are received at FTS and they go through a rigorous incoming inspection process. During this process, the parts are measured for accuracy, making sure they meet the drawing and also their intended purpose. Once all the parts have been deemed acceptable, they are assembled into kits. A kit is basically a grouping of parts that will later be given to a technician, as we will see, and they will assemble those parts and then that will move on to the next technician. It's very much like an assembly line process, except it's done in a very clean environment. So we're here in, we're looking, not in yet because we're not gowned up yet, but we're outside one of the clean rooms here in the assembly facility, and Kunal is just going to tell me a little bit about why there's a clean room and what it takes to build a clean room. So go ahead, what do you got here?
Yeah, so we actually constructed these clean rooms in a custom way, designed especially for our needs. So these are actually hybrid clean rooms.
Okay.
And what you're seeing here is the clean room we dedicate to watch construction and watch assembly and testing.
Okay.
And then the other room that you'll see a little bit later is dedicated to movement production and regulation, some of our finer work.
Got it.
You'll notice in the other room there's big windows in a much more zen environment, quiet, and really for fine work.
Got it.
The clean rooms were built basically with HEPA filtration on top.
Oh, okay.
and positive airflow going out into the gouting room and then out into the viewing room, which is where we are.
So the things I see in the ceiling that look like light fixtures are not.
Exactly.
Okay.
These are HEPA filters, each one of them.
Got it.
And basically what they do is they pick up the air, they circulate it up into the filters, and then send filtered air that's free of any contaminants, any particulates, any dust.
Got it.
Dust is a really big issue for us.
Sure,
Lint
absolutely.
is a really big issue for us.
Okay.
Any little tiny parts that get into watches
Okay.
are big no-nos, especially in the movement room.
Right, of course.
Where the parts are so small that I
Right.
can't even see them.
Right,
So,
right.
you know, the screws that these
Makes
guys
sense.
are screwing into a movement, I can't even see with my naked eye. So,
Right.
so really they need no dust. A piece of dust can completely ruin the whole thing.
Before we get into that clean environment, we're going to do one dirty task, which is done totally outside the clean room. So let's check out what stem crown combination is. This machine assembles the stem and the crown. Sounds very simple, right? Just a stem being screwed into a crown. Not exactly, considering that stems need to be cut to an extreme precise measurement, usually about the thickness of a sheet of paper. It's best done by machine. If you've ever cut one of these by hand, you'll know what a laborious process it can be. The technician loads the stem and crown separately into the machine. Now watch fast because the action happens pretty quickly. It will take the stem and cut it and grind it smooth. Then it takes the crown, it dabs a little bit of thread locking compound inside the crown. Then it screws the crown and the stem together. Once completely assembled, it then drops it into a bucket for it to go on to the next step of the assembly process, which is the clean room, the real assembly of the wristwatch. Okay, so we are at stage one. All the parts have been kitted, and I'm here with Missy.
Hello.
Hi. And Missy's going to show us how to put a dial on an Ameriquartz movement, so I'm going to let you take it away. So first up, she is taking an assembled Ameriquartz 7122 movement, and she is installing on it a dial spacer ring. She then takes the dial, inspects it.
Give it a little blast of nitrogen and make sure there's no debris on there, and then we check the dial feet on the back.
Perhaps there is a bit of adjustment that needs to be made, and then she will fit the dial to the movement.
So you've got the day and the date window to orient it, as well as this little notch here that matches up with where the stem goes. So we've got the feet in very carefully. There we go. And then we give it a flip. And then we've got these movement holders here, which MJ has actually cut this little notch in there so our dials fit perfectly and don't slide around. And then back with our tool, and we've got the clamp, so you go back in that little curve and push that in with good downward pressure. And then we give it a quick check here to make sure there is no space between the dial and the movement. And there we go.
Once this is deemed correct, this assembly will now move on to hand installation. Okay, so I'm sitting here with Brad.
Yes.
Nice to meet you, Brad.
Nice to meet you.
Brad's gonna fit some hands on an Islander for us today. So take it away.
So I am trying to find the date jump so I could put the hands on exactly where they need to go.
I totally dislike setting hands. Very difficult. FTS has a few ways they can assemble hands. They can put them on with little hand tools, as you're seeing here. They have the plunger tools, the fine Swiss plunger tools, and also in another video I'll show you they have an automated hand placer, which is really cool. But Brad apparently has done this a couple of times because he sets the hour, minute, and seconds hand lickety-split. Now you're checking for registration between where the minute hand is and where the hour hand is?
Yes, making sure that they hit the marks right.
Got it. And just watch how quickly he installs the seconds hand. Absolutely crazy. You can tell he does this a lot. Very interesting thing about setting hands that I did not know will be explained by MJ, their Chief Technological Officer.
So very quickly, I want to point out why it's so important to have a special hand-fitting movement holder with a proper jewel support, specifically when installing the seconds hand.
Okay.
So when we install the movement to fit the seconds hand,
Sure.
that little jewel support, which is slightly smaller than the outer diameter of the jewel, and
Okay.
it's set at the correct height
Okay.
to where the jewel is actually supported.
So it's actually the jewel is actually bearing on that tip.
correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So that when we install the seconds hand, it does not cause that jewel to shift.
Got it. Got it.
Because if it were to shift, now you might end up with excess end shake.
Okay.
And that excess end shake will cause all kinds of malfunction.
Okay,
So,
and then this is something that you wouldn't notice in an inspection or.
well, it's hard because we're talking about a
Very small amount.
very small amount, thinner than a piece of paper, half
Okay.
amount of a piece of paper. But that might be just enough for the gears to disengage from each
Got it.
other.
Okay.
And or rub against the internal surface of the train wheel bridge and so on.
Okay. Once the hands are installed, they then go through the hand quality control process. During this process, they rotate the crown to make sure that the day and date change at the proper time. And then looking at it from the side, they make sure there's ample clearance between the hour hand and the dial, the hour hand and the minute hand, and the minute hand and the seconds hand, making sure they're all straight and nothing will interfere with one another through the lifetime that you will own this watch. This process is very important to make sure that maybe in 7 or 8 years, a small incline on one of the hands won't become a problem and bump into, say, a dial marker or another one of the hands. Here we are now at casing assembly. We are joined by KG, hello, and she will be demonstrating this for us. So go ahead, take it away.
Great. So what I want to start with is the sub-assembly. So what I want to do is take out the plastic stem here. To do that, I will click it into place into neutral mode. There is a button here where I can take it out. Now I will put my assembly into its movement holder, making sure that it is secure. See that it's ticking right now. I have a little check there. Make sure that my dial and hands look good. And then I will protect it. I'll take my nitrogen hose. Clean that up.
The case is first inspected for dirt and debris, and it is cleaned thoroughly to make sure there's not a speck of dust that remains. As we all know, there is nothing worse than assembling a watch, for those of us that modify watches, and then turning it over and seeing a little speck of dust that just catches the light. Of course, they want to avoid that here, which they do by using the clean room and, of course, excellent lighting. One thing about this place, the lighting was phenomenal, as you can see for filming even.
So I will come at it at an angle while placing it over. And then this part is where you want a really good light and make sure that everything's looking good. If I see a lint or something, I'll take off my case again carefully. Clean it up a bit more. Go back down in an angle. Check it again. Then I will remove my movement holder carefully. I will grab an SCC, which is a stem crown combo. These are pre-made already. And then while I place it in very carefully to align it up with the movement, I don't push it in all the way. And then I will take a casing ring right here. Very gently make sure that it's secure on the opposite side so I can then push my SCC in. Make sure that I'm not hurting the movement. And then I might use a acrylic stick to press down a little further. What's next is now the gasket that I have to put in. So it's already lubricated here in this little sponge container. And so what I want to do is carefully grab it, not contaminating my finger cuffs. And I'll place it very carefully in the groove here without touching anything. What I want to do is now drop my case back on and tighten it, making sure that the gasket doesn't escape. I want to take one last look, just making sure everything looks good. And that's it.
Okay, I have Andrew here. Andrew is going to be closing up the Islander watches that we've been assembling, so I will leave it to him. Go ahead, Andrew.
Cool. So what we like to do first is just wipe off anything that makes contact with the case or the case back, just to get all the grime off. Wipe it with 91% alcohol, and also the case back itself. Get all the grime off. Get it seated nice and tight. Remove anything from the table. All we're doing is make sure we have good contact. Give it a nice tight right turn so it doesn't want to go anymore. And boom, case back closed.
As you can see, they're actually using a rubber boot on the tool rather than the conventional spanner wrench that most of us are used to. This rubber boot provides all the friction that's required, and you can see as the tool comes down and spins and turns, it tightens it just enough so that it can be removed in the future without being the Incredible Hulk. Once this is done, the watch will then go to water resistance testing before putting the strap on, because it's just easier to test it without the strap. Here we have KG again, and she is loading the heads into the Hormec water resistance testing machine. This is a state-of-the-art machine that is used to check each and every Islander and make sure that it is a full 200 meters of water resistance. So the heads are installed in a little pressure chamber, each one individually, and that chamber is pressurized up to 200 meters of depth, 20 bar. After a couple of minutes, the pressure in these chambers is released, and then each head is put in what I'm calling a pressure checker. If there was a leak in the case, the pressure in these little chambers would increase, and it would be witnessed in the sight glasses above the machine. After this test is run, this is called the fine leak test, they then do a gross leak test where they pull a vacuum on all the chambers. And again, if there was a gross leak, one chamber would pull more air than the others, and there would be a difference in the sight glasses. In this case, everything passes, and all these watch heads will now go on to strapping. 20 years down the line, what is your ultimate goal with
Well,
the
20
whole
years
thing?
down the line, I would like to see the American watch industry come back to some of the glory that we had in the past.
Okay.
I would like to see independent watch brands not be so controlled by foreign suppliers.
Sure.
I'd like to see them have a little bit more say in the products that they build and create.
Okay.
And so that's
Makes
really
sense.
what we're about.
Okay, that's cool. Because as you know, because I'm making my own brand now, so obviously I go overseas for a lot of stuff. But you know, once I heard what you guys are doing here, I was like, oh my goodness, this is awesome. I don't have to deal with all the time zone headaches. You know, the 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. calls.
Absolutely.
And everything
Yep.
else, and people that actually speak the language.
Yes.
And
yes.
all of the good stuff.
Obviously, we create components here. We also bring in components from overseas, but we really want to have a central place in America where brands can bring all their products, have them evaluated, have them
Okay.
assessed.
Okay.
So it's kind of a safeguard also for the parts that are brought in. And then
Okay.
on top of that, we are creating components and continuing to add to the components we build here,
Okay.
with the hopes that eventually one day we'll be an independent, watchmaking country. That
Sure.
we won't have to go outside to build a lot of our products.
Strapping is a process I'm sure we're all very familiar with. Here we have Brad again, and he is installing the bracelet onto the Islander head, taking care not to scratch the case lugs with the tool. And once it is installed, he is pulling and checking to make sure that the lug pins are firmly seated in the lugs. So we're almost done. One final check, and that would be a final inspection. Here we have Isaac going over the entire watch, making sure that everything is done properly, every operation was done successfully, inspecting it again for dirt and debris, checking the time, looking over the finish of the watch, making sure everything functions the way it is supposed to, and that this Islander diver will provide a lifetime of enjoyment.